kindergarten through 12th grade. We also have group tennis. We have a major family component where we're really trying to help the families and help them learn how to parent their child and advocate for them, their families throughout the actual schools. And then there's a large accountability piece as well.
Great, thanks, Dave. Good afternoon, I guess it is. My name is Alicia Gallegos, and I am the director of the San Jose Charter School Consortium. The San Jose Charter School Consortium has existed for about 2.5 years, a little bit longer, and I say that because even before the consortium existed by name, groups of charter schools in San Jose were sort of getting together and figuring out how their work really correlated and how they could work even better together to achieve stronger student achievement progress in San Jose in particular. And so the consortium has been around again for about 2.5 years, and what we do is we are a part of the broader California Charter Schools Association, but we focus specifically in San Jose and specifically in the low-income areas of San Jose, or primarily the low-income areas of San Jose, to increase college success in those areas. And we're very deliberate about using that term college success. So it's not just about increasing student achievement or high school graduation rates, but it really is around from the very beginning to sort of college graduation is what our goals are for the communities in San Jose. The members who are members of the consortium, so the consortium, and this has been a lot of what has happened over the last couple of years thanks to SB2's help, is that we've been able to figure out who are we and what do we do and who are members. And so what the consortium has decided is that the mission being that college success for low-income students in San Jose, that it is going to work specifically with other schools and organizations who are also doing that exact thing and pretty much only doing that exact thing. And so that means that we tend to be a little bit exclusive, but at the same time we are trying to encourage other schools, other charter schools, and even other district schools and other organizations to really look at themselves and how they can help do similar things for San Jose and have such high expectations for underserved communities. And so the members of the consortium right now are ACE Charter School. Many of you know ACE, whose executive director is Greg Littman. Downtown College Prep. Many of you know Downtown College Prep, and I used to work at Downtown College Prep, so I ended up being principal there, worked there for 9 years, knew Jamie and SB2 from Downtown College Prep, and Susan as well. And the other members, Rocket Ship, so they're 3 schools and going on 100,000 schools nationwide with John Danner. KIP, we have 2 KIP Bay Area schools in San Jose, and hopefully there will be more than that in San Jose. We're pushing them towards that. And Downtown College Prep, ACE, KIP, Rocket Ship. And then we have a 5th member that is not a school, but you guys are probably familiar with PACT. So they're people acting in community together, a grassroots organization in San Jose. And so while they are not a school, they are very strong advocates of charter schools, particularly in the areas that we're working in. And so they are also members of the consortium, along with the California Charter Schools Association. So really excited to be here and to talk more about the work that we do. And it's pretty incredible to have a larger group of folks who are doing similar work, and then partners who are supporting that kind of work come together and to think about how we can really make some strong change. So I'm glad to be part of that.
Good afternoon. My name is Grainger Marburg. I'm the Executive Director of Peninsula Bridge. And I'm going to go a different route here and start with a question, which is, when you think of the summer slide, what comes to mind for you? Well, for me, growing up, the summer slide was something that was enjoyable. It was fun. It usually indicated going to a park or something like that. For my work, unfortunately, the summer slide has become a very negative term, which is about what happens, particularly with students coming from the lower end of the socioeconomic ladder during the summer, when they don't have a lot of opportunities to kind of engage constructively in things. And what has happened over the years is that, a child entering kindergarten who, starts out of the gate just like his or her middle and upper income peer, the same place, same potential, same smarts. And what happens is that over a period of years, there's this cumulative effect where, every summer you have this kind of backslide, or it's also termed summer learning loss. And for students coming from lower income homes and, predominantly students of color coming from lower income homes, this means that they lose 2 to 3 months of learning during this period of time. And if you start to do the math, you realize that by 3rd, 4th grade, you have students who are already a grade or 2 behind where they should be, and has nothing to do with where they started or where they should have been going. And so this leads me to the mission, which is that Peninsula Bridge, which is not quite as long as EPAT, but we just celebrated our 20th year this year. That for 20 years, really, that's been our mission, is to really combat this phenomenon, this very insidious phenomenon of the summer learning slide, and really help students coming from lower income homes, in our case from East Palo Alto, Redwood City, and San Mateo. Really give them an opportunity at a quality, rigorous summer program that's academic based to kind of stay on track and really get ahead. And so the vehicle we use for that is we have these partnerships with private schools in the area, now 7 of them, who open their doors during the summer and give us their space for free. And then the money we raise is really to pay for the site directors and the master teachers and the teacher assistants who usually come from those schools as well to kind of do the program. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Perfect. Thanks so much for those great intros. And the rest of the time is going to be Q&A. So I'm going to get us warmed up a tiny bit while you're all thinking about what you want to ask. And so the first question I wanted to ask you guys is if each of you, we'll go the opposite direction this time. If each of you could tell us, just briefly, what is the biggest challenge you find in your work in trying to get at-risk kids to college? I know there are many challenges, but what would you rank number 1?
That was a tough one. I thought about this one for a while, and I think that for me, going back to what I just said, it has nothing to do with one's potential or one's smarts to start with. What I have learned over the years in doing this work is that a lot of it has to do with perceived obstacles. And I was recently at a program at the Community Foundation, and this guy from Stanford was talking about mindset, and how often one's mindset is really determining where you think you can go or where you think you can't go, whether or not that reflects reality. And I think that in many cases, with our population, things like money. I can't go to a good private school if that's what you want to do, or I can't go to college because we don't have the money to do that. It's not that there aren't, talking about things like financial aid, or that doesn't mean anything. They just think that money's an obstacle. Or I'm not the type of person who goes to college. And even though, you can talk till you're blue in the face and say you are actually great college material, if there's a perception that you're not, that's an obstacle. So I would say that, to kind of encapsulate that, I would say that perceived obstacles in terms of why you can't go to college is the number 1 challenge for us.
Great, thanks. Alicia?
That's very similar to what was just said, was actually my number 1 as well, but kind of the way I thought about it was in a slightly different way in terms of the low expectations that we place on kids. So the way that those perceptions perhaps come about, that maybe I'm not college material, oh, I don't have enough money, or oh, I'm not a citizen, it's kind of the ways that the system has sort of placed low expectations on kids. There are so many times when I have heard, and I continue to hear, and it's just so sad, it's a tragedy really, to hear, oh, but not everyone should go to college. And really when people are making statements like that, the groups that they're thinking about are certain groups, right? And so I definitely think that's one of the biggest sort of obstacles. And then the second one, can I say my number two just really quickly? My number two, because we have sort of similar number ones.
Yeah.
So, my second one was really around. So my first one was around how we have low expectations for kids, and my second one was really around folks not being able to really think about, really be transparent around the failures that exist. So I think that's the second one, and they sort of come together, but I do think that's the second one, not being able to really look at what is happening now and say, okay, there are some failures, and we do need to improve. And our, graduation rates for college and from high school and kids being at grade level are not as good as they could be, and the potential is not being reached. I think that's the second one.
Mm-hmm. Great. Dave?
I'm going to go a different route, and then I'm going to say, well, I totally agree, and those are extremely, extremely important. For us and for EPAT, I'm going to say our number one is got to be parents. It's got to be family. And when I say parents, I don't necessarily mean mom or dad. I mean the person at home who's helping doing the parenting. I think in Silicon Valley, it's tough, it's expensive, people are stressed out. I mean, there's a lot going on, and I think the family members are not able to consistently do what they need to do to send the messages to their particular child that you can go to college and do the things that they need to follow up on, whether it's advocating at their school or checking their backpack or checking their homework, because there is a perception that I can't afford to go, I can't do this, I can't. I mean, there's all these obstacles and doors, but I mean, no one ends up college and says, well, how did I get here? If you trace the steps, you know that there was a coach, there was a college counselor, there was a teacher, there was someone helping advocate for you. And so to me, it's finding the groups, the people, the family, the parenting who are helping really advocate for a particular child to get them the confidence, to let them know that you can achieve and you can do this, and also provide the actual scaffolding. For us, it's the parents aren't able to be as consistent as they want to be, even though they know how to do certain things. But the house payments due, or the car payments due, or the house is being foreclosed on. I mean, those types, the education doesn't become the priority. Survival does.
Great, thank you. Second question, more positive side of that question. Instead of the challenges, what do you think is the best news, the best thing going on right now with closing the achievement gap? And let's start with Alicia this time.
I mean, I work with the Charter School Consortium, so I am going to have to say that a lot of the work that is being done with the charter schools is in some ways, in the reason why, one of the reasons why charter schools really exist is to sort of be able to do some experiments, right, with schools. And with how, what are some best practices and what could work well and thinking outside the box. And I think what some of the charter schools like Rocketship, for example, like ACE are doing, really being focused and clear about their mission being, again, college, getting kids to and through college. And starting from the lower level. So Rocketship starting at kindergarten and ACE in middle school and, all of the other schools. I think that's really one of sort of the best sort of news that's happening now, and models that people can look at. And I think that's really what needs to happen as well, is that there are certain models that are hopefully over the next few years will be looked at as proven models of success. And so I think that can really help there.
Great. Dave?
I'm going to say, charter schools, I think there's a number of wonderful programs coming up, and there's a lot of programs supporting the kids and providing scaffolding. But to me, the biggest thing, again, going back on my family, parents, stressed out Silicon Valley thing, I'm going to say it's definitely having the economy coming back. Because I think that's relieving a lot of pressure off of a lot of families, getting them to think of the future, think of actual possibilities versus thinking, how am I going to eat today? They're getting opportunities, because especially at EPAT, we have found over and over again, we have these solid families, some solid uncles and brothers helping, and then when they had to take on the second job and the third job, then paying attention to home education fell by the wayside. So I'm just going to go a bigger picture and say economy coming back as help.
Mm-hmm.
Are you, among the client base in this actually from Bridges, are you starting to see the economy coming back and you know, is that anything different? Or is that just something you'd like, you know, you hope people see moving forward?
Well, for EPAT, we don't have families losing their homes now. A year ago we did. You know, we don't, so that has helped a lot because you're taking a burden of life off of a lot of families, and now they can refocus and prioritize. It is a longer road. The challenge will always be there, but I mean, it does affect them.
And I don't think, I mean, with the schools that I work with, that have about, at the very lowest, about 75% free or reduced lunch rate at their schools. We haven't quite seen it start to improve yet. I mean, many of the families are renting, so rents have gone up. Jobs are still pretty difficult to come by, especially when we're dealing with a population that citizenship status is always in question, right? And so that becomes really difficult. So haven't necessarily seen that happen quite yet. But because there are so many organizations, support organizations out there, I think people are willing more to reach out to those organizations, and so feeling a little bit of light, even though there's a lot of darkness.
I don't feel comfortable responding to that. I don't have a gauge, really. I mean, I don't know.
Let's have you answer the other question of what's the best news.
You know, for me, it starts with things like what SV2 with Sandhill and Packard has done with this particular cohort. I love the idea that a group of stakeholders that have a similar goal can combine efforts and really think about how to leverage resources and think about achieving bigger ends by helping each other. And I think that it's still early on, and I think that efforts like this still need to bear fruit. But I feel that it gives me hope that things are happening, and I feel like I've had more. I feel like in my role, I feel like I've talked to more other organizations and entities, both private, or I should say, including private, public, and social sector organizations. And I feel like there seems to be more integration in terms of understanding that this is a complex issue and that you need to have a coordinated effort to kind of get the results you're looking for. So for me, I would say it's really about starting to see this type of collaboration take hold.
Great, thanks. So everybody, I have more questions if we need them, but I sense that you all are probably ready to jump in. So you can ask a question to a specific person or to all three, whatever you want. Who's ready? Lance.
Not a philosophical question. So again, you raised something really interesting. You kind of talked about the evolution from focusing on the customer being just a student to a more holistic approach of focusing on the family. So I'd actually like each of you to kind of think about that and talk about it philosophically of how your thinking has changed and where you kind of see it going in terms of the holistic approach that you're taking, okay, that is your organization. But then if you can then, after you think about that, if you layer on top of that, then how do you think about collaboration with other nonprofits, right, to bring even more benefits to the clients that you come to serve? So both how you evolve in your thinking and how you think about partnerships and collaboration as well.
Who wants to go first?
I'll take that one. I think the way we've evolved in our thinking is that it's become clearer and clearer, at least in the time I've been there in the last 5.5 years, that we cannot do the work we want to do. We cannot achieve what we want to achieve in terms of our mission without a certain degree of parental or family involvement. We just can't do it. The flip side of that is there are times when we have a wonderful kid who's done everything he or she needs to do to kind of position him or herself to be in our program. and we don't have that parental support. We don't have that family support. And so I am put in a very awkward position because I think, is it double jeopardy for that child now? Say, you're not going to get a tuition-free ride with us because you don't have this last piece to sign off. So it's a tough one. So you have to kind of be a little bit less rigid at times. But I think that, in the end, we strongly agree that we can't do this without that partnership, that we have to have that partnership. So that's the recognition piece in terms of the philosophical. Where do we go with that in terms of collaboration? I would say that we don't always have the tools we need in-house to deal with that piece the way we might want to. But what I do, and what Bridge has always done, is leverage. And I feel like there are so many organizations that might have that piece figured out better than we have. So for example, I go to David because I know that Dave has this piece as a bigger part of his program. And in fact, we've already talked. I had my program director talk to David, or we said, like, what is it you're doing that we could replicate, or what is it that another organization is doing? So that's where we've gone organizationally, is to think about, well, they have a successful component that we would like to now adopt. But going back to the first thing, we first and foremost agree that this is a piece we need to have.
I would say similarly. I mean that we there is no success that can be had without parents if we're talking about the mission of the consortium and college success. I mean, from sort of the very beginning, we've known that, but it's really been about how do we then become partners with parents. And I like the definition you use. It's not necessarily the mom or the dad, right? It's so the broader family. And so, again, with all of the schools that we are as a consortium, or that I work with in the consortium, every school has sort of a component of parents as partners. The way that we've evolved in our thinking is not only parents as partners in terms of, filling in the weekly newsletter or coming to do supervision after school or during lunch, but it's about parents as leaders in their students' education, and not only in their students' education, but also pushing the sort of mission of each of the schools and now of the consortium forward. And so one of the ways that we've done that in terms of collaborating with other organizations is not only is PACT a member of the consortium, but we have now sort of morphed the organizations, even though they all do things very differently at their schools. PACT now has a partnership as PACT, a partnership with each of the schools to build a sort of parent empowerment strand at their schools. And so, for example, ACE was the first to have that because PACT was very involved in ACE getting going as a charter school. And so they looked to ACE's model, and then, Rocket Ship now has one of those at each of their schools. Downtown College Prep is in the talks right now with what it looks like at a high school level. And then KIP, because they do different things, because their model has existed for a lot longer time, they're still also working on, okay, what is it going to look like at KIP? But that is something that we're going to be using, because not only is it about the important things like going and being active on a day-to-day basis at the school on very sort of tangible things, but it's also about the empowerment. So, really coaching and encouraging that sort of empowerment feeling with parents so that they start to understand that they are leaders in this and that they are probably the most powerful. I mean, when we're talking about anything, I mean, a teacher can do so much and it's incredible. Parents are the most powerful. And not only with their own student, but also with other parents and with the community and with board members and with, political officials. They're really powerful. And so that's the sort of second step that we're working on now, and we're pretty excited about that. And it's pretty complex because of all the reasons that have already been said.
You've changed only, well, you can't climb a mountain in, shorts and tennis shoes. You need ropes, you need guides, you need help. And you need to find the people who are going to help guide particular children to do that. That became the family component. And it was really crucial to us because, sort of off topic, but on the same vein, I get asked, why aren't there more minorities, people of color playing tennis? And I say, well, because probably the families that play and the friends don't play. So if they don't play, it's harder for them to get into it. Similar to getting into college. If their family didn't go to college and their friends aren't going to college, how are they going to get to college? So we had to really find home pressure, school pressure, and EPAT pressure, put this kid in this triangle, trap them, and say, we're all going to squeeze and apply the pressure. And so for us, that's why it was crucial. We had to find someone at home to squeeze on that end, because otherwise there wasn't out. For EPAT, as far as collaborating, partnerships, EPAT's always been extremely active at helping families, teaching them to advocate at schools, at after-school programs. We are not the program for everybody. Our summer program is more tennis involved. If there's someone that's more academically involved, they're going to the Bridge program. And we've had several kids do that. We're going to find other programs and partner with them by saying, we're not keeping you for a statistic. We're shoving you out to another program because we want you to get more impact. And for us, the biggest partnership and the biggest collaboration is empowering our parents, teaching our parents, and giving them the tools. So they are now partners at the school. They can go to their teacher. They can advocate for their child. They can fight just as hard and have the confidence to do that. Because a lot of the cultures that we deal with, especially the Tongan culture, the Pacific Islander culture, teachers are, they're golden. So it's very difficult for them to have the confidence to go speak to them. And they don't know that that's accepted and that's okay. So the way EPAT tries to partner is actually by letting the families do the actual partnering for us. Because that's much, much more important to us.
You go to the schools with the parents?
A lot of times we do, yeah. Yeah.
Model?
Every quarter EPAT has sort of a theme. So we have a communications theme, an ownership theme, a responsibility theme. So during the communication theme, we have parent workshops. We do mock things. How do you ask a teacher a question? How do you go deal with a problem with the principal? And if they do need help because the language is a barrier or they don't understand the process, EPAT does go in and help them. But again, we want the family members to be the ones who are initiating rather than EPAT as the program. Because ultimately the actual success is coming from sports again, is does your game travel? So, you can play good at home, but can your game travel when you're outside? So, the kids and the families, they understand EPAT, but can they do that exact same thing at EPAT, at the school, at their job, at some other program?
Harry, yeah.
I recall having talked with Grainger, him sharing ideas about extending his summer program into the rest of the year to work for engagement of family and parents. So what I just heard is a lead-in to my question, Grainger, about how's it going and what are you planning to do to make it successful?
Well, the way we look at it is that even though the primary program transpires during the summer months, it is a year-round thing, and even though that's our bread and butter, so to speak, the piece that we fill, our involvement really needs to be year-round. And so we have offered now, for the last 3 years, we've developed this series of parent information sessions, which came out of some focus groups that I held a number of years ago to really ask parents of our students what would be most useful to you. Because I feel like when I was on the foundation side of things, there was a little bit of hubris coming from the foundations in terms of like what parents needed. And I felt like there wasn't always a sense of knowing from the parents themselves what they were looking for. And so we really asked them about that, and they came up with 3 main things. One was, of course, to with a lot of our parents, they had not finished middle school or gone to high school, or sometimes they finished middle school and not finished high school, but there wasn't a lot of range there. And so there was some difficulty in terms of feeling like they could be helpful with their kids in terms of homework and things like that, or not knowing if their kids were hoodwinking them by saying, no, it's all done. They're like, oh, okay, but they didn't know how to check that. And I'm like, I said, I have an elementary school kid, and I have that problem now, so that's okay. But so the thing is, there's that piece. But the thing that really came through was that communication and how to be better communicators with one's middle school child, in our case, or with school administrators and others. So these workshops have really been things that we've started to kind of develop more and more in the past few years, and kind of in our way of trying to leverage and get the biggest bang for the buck. We recently partnered with the Children's Health Council, and we're actually having their facilitators kind of, because we can do it for a lot less money than have our own. But they have a huge menu of options to choose from, and then you can tailor the topics a little bit and have the material kind of go with what you're looking for. And they'll do it from, they can have one person or 200 people, it doesn't matter to them. So that's one thing, but that's very, superficial, Harry, in terms of like, this is just, information you might want. The other thing is that, and it kind of speaks to what you guys are talking about, we feel very strongly that we need to find ways to have the parents become leaders among themselves. So there needs to be more of a grassroots piece, which is what PAC is so amazing with. It's all about empowering and basically saying, you can actually advocate for yourselves and be a lot more effective. And so the hope is that, with this kind of information piece that we're developing, that we're also going to have parents who start to take on some of that in terms of becoming the facilitators and becoming kind of leaders in terms of the parent groups. And then that also helps us throughout the year in other ways. So that's what the hope is. We're kind of like building out with the ripple effect.
I'm curious what each of your organizations do to try to encourage students that you see as potential bright lights to ultimately apply to some of the private schools where you have bridge programs.
I feel a little conflicted about that because, on the one hand, my partners, at least half of my partners, because I really feel very strongly that I have two sets of partners, and we are a bridge in many ways. And one is the public schools from which our students are coming, and the private school campuses where our students attend these programs. And so when I speak to the heads of the schools where we have that host the program, I feel it's very important for us to say our mission is not, and never has been, in my opinion, to get our students into those private schools. Our mission is to help these students be prepared for success in high school and beyond. And whether that's at MA, at Woodside High, or at Menlo School, it doesn't matter. However, I think it's a wonderful byproduct of what we do to have students be able to go to those schools. And so what we've done is we've basically asked the admissions offices at those schools to really meet us halfway to say, look, our job is not to recruit for you. If this is an important piece of what you want to do, if this is important to you as a school, then we can be a partner in that and we can help identify students. But we also aren't there to kind of pull these bright students from the public system.
Yeah.
And create more of a brain drain in terms of what they're dealing with. It's really to say, here's another opportunity, and if this is the right fit for you, then let's make sure we give you the tools you need to pursue that opportunity. But I don't want to be an advocate necessarily for that, because I feel like we want students to kind of find their own path, and a lot of times, especially around here, there's some really good public schools. Mm-hmm. And I think those options need to always be open.
And how often does that happen, and how does it work?
So let's say at our Castellea site, it's only girls. That's a half site because it's only girls. Out of a class of 30, Castellea recruited 2 of those girls and who are now full-time students at Castellea. So when you look at it, the percentage isn't high, but it's also pretty decent because they're getting a full ride now for potentially 6 years at Castellea.
So you're only working with the site then, but let's say there were some boys and
right.
some girls at Woodside Prairie.
Right.
Might you then organize that with Cassie?
Right. Well, what we've done is there is a program that one of the host sites hosts, which is Sacred Heart Prep, and it includes all of the private schools that are involved with us and others. And essentially, they reach out to all of the kids in our program who are aging out, so once they kind of are going into 8th grade, and invite them and their parents to come to a series of information sessions about how to apply to independent schools if that's what you want to do. But what they try to do is not point them to any school in particular, but say, here are a set of strategies you can use. And so we make that open to all kids who are basically aging out of the Bridge program.
How many come to that?
We have about 20 families, 25 families. Yeah. But that's out of 75, so it's a third. Because our program is from Rising 5th to Rising 8th, and we have now 300 students. So.
Laura, did you want to hear from the others on that, or?
Yeah, I can comment on that. I mean, I think that thinking about each student individually and their individual needs is really important, and I think that's part of what happens with the schools that I work with. Because they're so small, I mean, every school is about 400, a little over, a little under, depending on the school. They're able to really look at kids' needs individually. So I think that's probably the most important piece. And in terms of, things that, we don't necessarily have schools like Castellea that our families are going to be able to go to or afford, even with significant financial aid. But really thinking about what kind of school is the most appropriate for students is still a question that every parent at every level is going to have. And so, even going beyond the middle school and high school and thinking about college, I mean, that's huge, right? So small private schools versus large schools, and what is most important, or where's the kid going to feel, an adult, going to feel most comfortable. And so starting to have those conversations and really looking at a student individually based on what their sort of progress has been, and being really open and honest, and again bringing parents in, not only into that, but sort of hoping that they will push into the school as well about what they think is most important. But the reality is, unfortunately, that in San Jose, that the schools that most of the students that we are serving, that the options that our students have, they're not very good, especially for the kinds of needs that our students need. I mean, first generation students getting to college, oftentimes they're students who, I'm sure you guys have heard this many times before, but whose parents, didn't graduate from the 3rd grade in the United States or from, the 2nd grade in their home country. And so it becomes very difficult when you're going to send a student, you have a choice between a small charter high school of 400 and a larger district school of 4,000, which is an option for many of our families in San Jose. And so I think it really is thinking about that, and that's where, just going to the questions before, where parent empowerment and parent leadership is so important, where parents are able to say, hey, look, we don't want this to be the only option for my students. So, and we know what my students' needs are, so let's think about what are some other options. And that's where, we had a large group of parents who came together last year, and they decided that they were going to fight for Summit Prep in Redwood City to come to San Jose, and Summit Prep is going to be opening up 2 new high schools in the fall of this fall, 2011, because parents were like, we need options. We know our kids have different needs, and this is something that can help fulfill those needs. So again, not necessarily the bright light exactly, but just thinking about needs individually.
EPAT's changed quite a bit. Early on, we were one site in the community of East Palo Alto, and 100% of the kids came from one school. We developed relationships with a number of private schools, and we had a number of kids go on to some great success. Menlo School, Pinewood, Sacred Heart, St. Francis, Woodside Priory, a number of private schools. Primarily, we went that route and advocated for our children because there was a gatekeeper. And there was a gatekeeper that didn't allow our kids into college track classes in the Sequoia Union School District coming out of the Ravenswood School in East Palo Alto. So you would have a capable 8th grader coming out who took algebra in 8th grade. They show up at a high school and they would have algebra again when they should have geometry. And there was no way to get them into, college prep classes. So EPAT decided we needed to go the private school route because we could show these schools, here's a bright, capable child who is being tracked in the wrong track, but in a private school we had sort of free reign of this is one curriculum, we're going to do that. We started advocating. Over probably the last 10 years, because of the Tinsley program, that's a voluntary transfer program where children in East Palo Alto and families can transfer and petition to get into neighboring schools and school districts. Palo Alto, San Mateo, San Carlos, Menlo Park. Because of that, now our kids have gone through the Palo Alto school district system. So now when they get a choice of a high school, Gunner Pally. Well, those are pretty good schools. So the private school route isn't necessarily as much as a press now because the gatekeeper isn't really keeping our kids out because they're not coming out of the Ravenswood school district. Now, we still go the private school route when there is a child where we think there's an environmental reason to put them there. So, and I say that is because you might have a bright, capable child, and now he's going to MA, where he can fall into, a bad group, a bad peer group. And this child will now be caught in that track and not really fulfill their potential. Now, a private school, a charter school, other places that are more positive peer environments where, 98% of the kids are going to college and they're all graduating from college, putting that type of at-risk kid into a private school, charter school environment, then it's a win. Because then the scaffolding is there. Now, it shoots us also in the foot because for our viewpoint is that once a child gets to a Menlo, a Pinewood, an Eastside Prep, a Summit, a charter school, an EPA charter, those schools, they're taking care of business. So we feel that you might need EPAT still, and the family might need it. But if you've been in EPAT for at least 3 years, we feel that we've given you and your family the tools that once you're in these other schools that have other support, go do your thing. We'll bring another kid in, we'll take your spot. We don't want to kick you out, but we also want to be real and say, you guys got this going on. You may not need us anymore. You're at Pinewood, you're at Menlo, you're at Sacred Heart, you're at, Summit. These terrific schools that are providing the support that 1,400 student public schools can't provide.
Now, Grainger, you have a different take on this one. If the kid gets, you treat kids differently depending on whether they get in the private school.
That's a good question because when I first got involved with Bridge, I was of the opinion that if a Bridge student got accepted by one of our host schools, that I felt at that point that student should no longer continue in our program and that we should open up that slot for someone who is coming from another, feeder school. My site directors actually really persuaded me otherwise because, knowing those school campuses where these students were going to, they said, the problem is that these students are still, even though they're academically ready, they are culturally having a very different experience. And that, for them to have the Bridge program still in the summer meant that they were able to kind of reinforce and kind of solidify some of the skills that they were trying to learn, but also feel like there was this posse of kids that were similar and that they could continue to, kind of build their own self-esteem. And I think that piece is one of those pieces now that I struggle with the most because I feel like it's one thing to say, hey, you are now prepared academically to be successful in this environment, but if the culture is so different that the student now feels alienated from two cultures instead of one, then are you really doing a service or a disservice for that child?
I definitely agree with what you're saying. And I had some of those experiences when I was working at Downtown College Prep. So there were a couple of students who just sort of were excelling academically, and they and their parents were like, okay, I think we're going to try one Notre Dame, one Bellarmine. And they did for about half a year, both of them. They weren't related, they're from different families, and it was in different years, but for about half a year, and they were just really uncomfortable. And academically, one of them was fine academically, the other one struggled academically, and then they ended up coming back because I think, in large part, what you were saying.
Ash?
Yeah, so my question has to do with effective consortium. And of course, I think everybody, most people here were part of the grant round that helped select Grainger and Dave's organization to be part of the Peninsula School Collaborative. But you, on the other hand, have been leading or being part of and then leading a consortium that's further down the road than where we are right now. So I'm really interested to hear your perspective on what has made the most, what's been most useful, like from the group, what have you learned, what hasn't worked, just anything we can gain as Grainger and Dave and Lindsay and I are just trying to make the most of it.
We want your best practices.
You're and for being a veteran of whatever 2.5 years or whatever. I don't know if I have them all solved yet, but I have thought about it quite a bit, and I'm having some back issues, so I'm standing. I don't want to tower over you all. One of the things that I did learn about the consortium, and I was really fortunate that it happened even before I came on board, was that it started from sort of the ground level up, so sort of very grassroots. And so I think having a group of folks who have a similar mission is important. And I think we hear that over and over again, but I found that to be equally as important when you're starting a consortium. So, and it took us about, I don't know, Jamie, like 7 months or something to actually come up with our mission for the consortium. One that sort of everyone can say, yes, I really agree with that. And I not only agree with it, but I'm passionate about it and I believe in it. And that aligns with what we are doing as an organization individually, you know, different than the consortium itself. And so I would say the mission piece is really important.
Well,
I think
what was your mission?
Our mission is increasing, the consortium increases college success in low-income communities of San Jose through the development of high-performing charter schools.
So it's funny how hard it is to get to that. Surely you
Isn't
all were doing that, you know, from the get-go, right?
Yeah, and so it was something that was happening, but we did talk about membership became that, so membership of the consortium, so who's actually going to be a part of the consortium? Are we talking about low income only? Does that need to be part of the mission? Does it not? Is it college success or is it college getting into college? Is it increasing student achievement or is it, again, does college have to be part of that? Is it charter school? Is it high quality school? All of those kinds of things came up. And we're lucky, and I think you guys are lucky as well, in that since, I mean, I'm sure everyone has had multiple conversations about missions many times in their professional lives, and so people definitely brought with them that experience, and it was helpful in some ways, and in other ways it kind of clashed a little bit, but just many drafts sort of with that, and really discussing what people can believe in, and what will sort of keep them coming back to that mission and that sort of consortium work. And then I would say the other piece was, and what I didn't do as well in the beginning, but because I was still trying to figure out where are we and what are we doing exactly, but is to really come up with some concrete goals and to sort of have a strategic plan. And that's something that, you know, Jamie and I talked a lot about. And I was able to look at different things, but really to have a strategic plan for the consortium. And that sounds very not profound, right? I mean, it's like, duh, of course you can have a strategic plan, but having some things that you can actually measure as a group. And that sometimes is much harder because you're all doing different things. And, you know, I can't really go and tell A's charter school, you now need to go and do X, unless A's charter school decides they're going to go and do X. And so it's really coming up with a strategic plan that people can buy into. And then the other thing that we did is we came up with a metric. So we have schools, but we came up with a particular academic student achievement outcomes that each of the schools in the consortium does need to meet if they're going to be part of the consortium. And then member bars, what I spoke with Jamie a lot about as well. So having sort of a member bar and some member requirements. And those were very tough conversations, right? Because again, I'm not leading a school, so I can't go in and say this needs to happen or that needs to happen. But the folks who are around the table are going to say, yeah, we can do this. We're going to do this. And so we ended up coming up with, I mean, we have numerical, so every year we're going to look at the schools in the consortium and whether they've met certain CST, so certain standardized testing goals. And that's something that as a consortium we decided was important because we believe that the work is important, but if we're saying we're going to increase college success rates, we actually have to show it. And we were saying that the standardized testing is one of the ways to do that. So I would say those pieces, the strategic planning work as soon as possible, getting that started was so helpful. And so I think this year, this is my second, so going into my second year, is a little bit clearer, a lot more focused. That's great.
You know,
You're welcome.
I wanted to add on to what you said, because, you know, I've read about professional learning communities, and there's some research around what is essential to them. And the first one that you said about having a passion around a particular goal, you know, reason for being there, that we're all here together because we care about this is essential. And having some work to do together is essential. And the one that you left out is yourself, which of course you take for granted. But you're there, you know,
Leader.
a facilitator, you know, someone to do some of that daily work to get things going is essential. And those other two are really essential to keep people coming back. You know, because you don't want it to just be another meeting that you have to go to. There needs to be a reason that you're going.
Yeah, when we gave the grant to you guys, Alicia, you had not been hired yet. And I spent some time talking with the various, I said, you know, you guys all have very strong egos and very strong opinions. Every single one of these people, if you meet them, they're very dynamic. And I said, you've got to get somebody who's really strong, who can, you know, who can deal with it, who can deal with you.
Yeah.
And
Who doesn't mind begging?
Anyone who hasn't asked a question yet who wants to? No? Okay, Harry.
When you set out to close the gap, as we all define it, and you're working with poor people who are gap exposed, San Jose, wherever, Redwood City, and yet there will be some who really aren't prepared or capable of going on to college success. How do you tell the difference?
Well, I think for, you know, you're talking about kids who are going all the way through high school, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, our program ends at the end of middle school. And so it's a little tricky because even though part of what we're hoping to achieve is really to you know, we have a theory of change. You know, essentially we say that, you know, if we have kids doing X things by the time they are at the end of middle school and starting high school, it is our belief that they will be successful in high school because their trajectory will change. And we have evidence in terms of data to show that if you are in certain college preparatory classes like Algebra 1 in 8th grade, or at least in 9th grade, and that you are in the right classes, other things will start to shape up. However, you know, for me, it's hard to think of college itself as being the end goal, because there are going to be kids who aren't going to be as successful in college, and that's okay. I think it's more about opportunity and the idea that there's an option for college. Because what really gets me is when people who aren't given that option, or it's stripped away before they have an opportunity to even pursue it. And I think, you know, if I think of my own upbringing, I think, you know, what was different about my upbringing from the kids of my program? I thought there was always an opportunity or an option to do what I wanted to do. And at one point I told my mother I wasn't going to college, and I remember that was really distressing for her. But I thought, it's up to me. Now, of course, I always wanted to go to college, but I just felt like, don't assume I'm going to go to college. Because she was just making that assumption. But then I thought, well, that's something that our kids don't have. They don't have these just, you know, it's an opportunity. It's an, you know, and I feel like first and foremost is the option there. Because if it isn't, we're dealing with a real social justice issue at the very core of things. And then after that, you can start saying, well, who's really going to be successful in college and who's not going to be. But it's hard to know, Harry, at that point, you know, who's going to be. But everyone should be at least positioned to have that opportunity.
Yeah, I would add to that just that I've seen and I've experienced and I even taught a few kids who I thought, I don't know. I'm not sure if you're going to graduate from, the 10th grade, let alone, get into college, and then just then make a significant turnaround. And it's insane. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know the formula. But what that has made me believe is that the option being there I agree, is absolutely important. But I am a strong believer in making it a sort of a given, and it's just going to be a must. You go to a rocket ship school if you're going to college. But what if I don't? You're going to college. Because I think what that does is that then creates that sort of mindset of, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go to college. And if I don't, someone's going to be disappointed. And I'm okay with that. I mean, we've had some kids who have left a four-year college and gone to a JV, a junior college, thinking sports, junior college from downtown college prep, and then have been nervous to call us because they're like, oh my God, I left. And I obviously don't want that to happen, but it's a really neat kind of feeling that kids know that there is that expectation for them. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, in many of the families' homes or family lives that many of the schools in the consortium work with, that it hasn't been part of their upbringing, right? That being an option, let alone that being a given. And so if somewhere in their life, someone is saying, no, you're going to college, period. And that's it, period. Like my mom said to me, right? You're going and that's it. And yeah, your choices are this one or that one, right? But you're going. Then I think that can help them sort of say, oh, I guess somebody kind of wants me to, somebody kind of wants me to. That's not necessarily saying that they're all going to be successful in college, but then I think it's up to the folks who have been sort of pushing to help them be as successful as they possibly can. And then let's be real, when they become adults, they have a choice, right? So if they're not going to go, they're not going to go, but at least they know that someone believes they should be there.
I'm going to add that, the road to going to college starts at birth. And I say that because of exposure, because of reference points, because of the experiences. And for us at EPAT, it's okay, let's go step one. Let's get these kids to graduate from high school. Let's get them to graduate from high school with a plan. And that's a plan for the future. If it's a junior college, a four-year school, a vocation, a job, military, we have a plan. I also feel that you only have options or opportunities if you're in position to take advantage of those options and opportunities. So let's treat the students the same. Let's set the table for them so that the opportunities and options is available for them to pursue higher education. If a child comes out, barely graduated from high school, they work for a couple years, and they think like, gosh, this is not it. I want to go become an electrician, a plumber. I want to go back to junior college. I want to transfer out. Great. You don't graduate from high school, that's no longer an option. So let's just make sure that, let's set the table rather than us tracking the kids and saying, you're going to college, you're going to, And while I think it's good to get that thought in the kids' heads and the families' heads early, I think step one is saying, hey, look, let's make sure we're setting the table so when an opportunity is there, you can take advantage of it.
And speaking about downtown college prep, the target student coming in has a 2.0 or worse in middle school. And these are in failing public middle schools in San Jose. So you can just imagine how many years behind they are. And I remember kids from the very first class that I didn't think were going to graduate from high school. And they graduated from college. And some of the kids who were the best and the brightest have not graduated. Have ended up in dropouts. So you cannot predict necessarily. And giving, everybody matures at different rates. Life can come in and knock you on your butt or push you upwards, and you don't know what's going to happen. And giving all of these kids a chance, I think, is so important.
Yeah. I'm going to add that, getting kids into college is a monumental goal. But to me, if program schools can give the kids and the families the tools to graduate from college, that's a bigger accomplishment and a bigger goal. Mm-hmm. Because there are smart kids, and we've had some brilliant kids who, they enter college, whether it's economics or just lack of, being organized, they might, slip out of there, then slip back in. But it's making sure the kids, you know, if that is an option and they do go and they get accepted, do they have the necessary things to graduate? Because that's really the bigger picture.
One of the, in the movie Waiting for Superman, one of the big themes was about education and using technology to customize education, and that is key ingredient for future success. I was wondering if you could comment on how what you think that is, and just basically how much of that, cues in that really went through.
I mean, looking at Rocket Ship's success so far, and again, they have 3 schools, and they're fairly young organizations still. But what Rocket Ship does, those of you who aren't familiar with it, so about 25% of the students' school day is in an online learning lab, in a learning lab, where they do some different online learning that's individualized to them, to that student. And so what that has allowed Rocket Ship to do is to save a significant amount of money, because there isn't a credentialed teacher who has to be in that learning lab. And so what they're able to do with that significant amount of money is not only use that towards things, operational things like facilities, but also towards professional development for their teachers, leadership development for their principals, leadership pipeline, all sorts of different things. And so I feel like not only is technology something that is significant in terms of a student's own learning, but I think it can also provide a lot of new opportunities for schools who are, especially right now, facing pretty significant cuts in their budgets. But I do think it's something that we still is fairly untested. I don't know if you all saw that, where different schools, I think up here more than anywhere else, but are using iPads in classes, and where Rocket Ship was one of the schools who declined a significant amount of iPads for their school, because they're like, well, it's kind of untested, number one, and number two, there aren't enough texts yet online. And so I think there's still a lot of growth that needs to happen there. And then for high school, there's also some really good online, I think there's K-12, it's called CK-12, something like that, right? And that is, so it's starting up, but I think it's really thinking about where does it need to go still.
Well, I think there's a lot of potential with using technology in different ways. I know with the Bridge program, we've experimented on a number of fronts. In fact, we piloted this program called Khan Academy, which is now getting all the press. I feel like saying, hey, listen, I mean, I've done everything to promote that guy, but now he's like on CNN and doing Oprah. So some years ago when he was just doing this as his side project from his day job, it was something that we introduced to the Bridge program. Because we felt like there was a lot of potential, but we didn't replace anything. It was a supplement to what we were doing. The thing about Bridge, though, is that one of our main selling points and one of the things that really distinguishes us, I think, from other programs or many other programs, is that we have this 4-to-1 teacher-to-student ratio, which is phenomenal. And these are students coming from classrooms that might have 25, 30-to-1 in terms of the average ratio. And that's just the way it is. It's not pointing at public schools or at other schools saying, look, get it down. That's just what they have to work with. It's, they're doing the best they can, and this is what the reality is. But what makes our program particularly special is the fact that these students get this individualized support and this kind of one-on-one attention that they don't get in their usual environment. And so with or without technology, I would say that really is one of our single most selling points, because the kids leave feeling that they have a contact with a student teacher assistant, with a master teacher, with a site director, and that's something very special. That said, though, I think there's a lot of room and a lot of potential for technology, because that's the reality is we have public school systems that could use help in different ways, and I think this is a tool. It's just not going to be the tool necessarily for every kid.
Yeah. No, it's here. It's here to stay. As far as teaching a kid about tech, I think, if I can't program an iPod, I'm asking a 12-year-old, because they know how to use iTunes, right? I can't do this iTunes or download this. I'm asking the kid, and they know what to do. I think things like using Excel and Word and PowerPoint and things like that, those are definitely useful skills. I think humans are still better than technology. I think one-on-one tutoring, a 4-to-1, a teacher, I think that's great. I think the downside of technology that we've seen and we've experienced is that the kids' critical reading skills have not developed because of technology. Because I really think back in the day, I'll say, you had a report on Christopher Columbus. So you go to the library, you find a couple books, you check out the books, you read the books, you take some notes, you sit down and you write a report. Now, you jump on the web page, you hit print, you take the page out of the printer, you walk back to your computer, now you're sort of plagiarizing and going back and forth, and you haven't processed, you haven't taken notes, you haven't developed critical reading skills because it's gotten really easy, and it's gotten too easy. And I think a lot of kids, because of technology, are getting hurt because of that. Because I still feel that, it's here, it's a great tool if leveraged properly and if used properly. But it can be, kids don't know how to look something up in the dictionary anymore, spell check, grammar check. How do you learn? And so I think that's really, it's a double-edged sword, I think.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
I've already asked.
Yeah, does anybody who hasn't? Okay,
I
Jason.
have a question for one of our visitors at home. This was emailed in from Nancy Cannon O'Connell. Our current education group is focused on English learning, and she wanted to get your creative ideas on how to identify innovators and successful organizations in that area.
For English language learners?
Yeah,
English learning.
yeah, it was to strengthen language arts skills. Was it specifically ESL folks or proficient in English? It could improving teaching. It could be technology or human teachers. Is what we want to. Any thoughts, Dave?
Sure. Very, very, very hard to identify the best programs. I think there's a ton out there. I think again it goes back to the home. It's very hard for a young child who's growing up in a Tongan-speaking household or a Spanish-speaking household. We're going back and forth. But I'm going to go again back into the home. Right? Is there a program that's helping empower parents of telling them to shut off the TV, turn off the video games, take your child to a library, and just do basic reading? Because again, it goes back to me spending time reading and working on the basics to really set the platform. Because I think it's the biggest thing out there is the lack, again, of reading skills and critical reading skills and the lack of vocabulary development that's hurt our kids when they're in science class, social studies class, because it's not that they can't grasp concepts. They can't. They can't understand what they're reading, and they can't process what they're reading. So to identify programs that are doing that, I think there's a program which has had great success. It's called Just Read. And they are located in Mountain View, and they're working with Mountain View High School. And they're actually a class, an elective class for Mountain View High School students who cannot read. And they come, they have a one-on-one tutor, they have a curriculum, and they take them through a toolbox. And they're identifying that, these kids don't know the basics. So we actually took this program, we took this toolbox, we did a pilot program with 5 of our kids over the actual summer that struggled at reading. And it's embarrassing to us that we didn't catch it earlier. But this program identified that this 8th grader did not know the alphabet. And they had a one-on-one Stanford student tutor for the entire year. Now, that's a bad assumption for us to assume that an 8th grader would know the alphabet. We knew that they struggled in reading. But this program crystallized to us what the root of the problem was. And so to me, you really have to go back to alphabet, sounding out words, phonics, things like that to really teach reading skills. And those are the programs that I would look for that really takes an 8th grader back down to kindergarten, A, B, sweet. I mean, that's so critical because the assumption later on is that you sort of miss these things.
Also, if it's about the learning process and about making the transition from one language to the other in terms of thought processes and stuff like that, I mean, we have a number of very successful bilingual programs, even right here in the Palo Alto school system, that you could learn from. And also a former SV2 partner, Reading Partners, would be a great source in terms of, talking with, the tutors and learning from the program in terms of working with kids who have language learning, who are learning a new language as they are academically learning new stuff too.
I would just add, I mean, all of the charter schools within the consortium have their own way of doing it and obviously targeting different grade levels, but just being able to kind of observe some of the classes as well, I think is extremely important. There's also a class at Downtown College Prep, for example, that's called Verbal Reasoning. So they have a numeracy class and a verbal reasoning class. And those, while it's not a separate organization, those kinds of programs I think are extremely important in terms of going back to the basics. And helping students, even if they're taking Algebra 2, kind of understand, oh yeah, I have to have, a capital letter at the beginning of each sentence.
Sure.
What's the best way for both adults and even students to volunteer for your organization?
EPAT's actually pretty tough, and I hate to say that. It's only because we actually require a consistent commitment. So to be a volunteer at EPAT, you are going to definitely commit for 2 days a week, an hour and a half, 3 days a week, and that's tough. Summers is a lot easier because we have more fun activities, and a lot of the high school age kids do get involved and help us out with our summer programs, specifically with our younger kids, our kindergarten through 5th grade group. That's actually gotten to be an extremely competitive process now. Last summer, I think 43 applicants applied for 25 spots to come and volunteer at EPAT. And we had to make it a competitive process because we were getting so inundated with people wanting to come and help. To me, the biggest value of volunteers is that someone who comes in, you have to realize you're making a commitment. And I know people have other lives, vacations and schedules and things like that, but it only works if there's consistency.
Mm-hmm. I would say for the consortium, I would say the schools. So even if going through me and then identifying specific schools that would best fit or fulfill the need of the volunteer, adults or students, depending on the grade level. And then, really college students would be huge. I mean, so volunteers who are college students at each of the schools in the consortium. And then in terms of the consortium itself and me, if there are adults who are similarly what Jamie has done in the past, and Susan is just helped in terms of strategic planning thinking and, all of those kinds of things. That is also helpful.
Well, for me, it's every summer we have about 50 or 60 high school and early college students who get involved. And the portal for them is usually at one of the host schools. So, the disadvantage is if you don't go to one of our host schools, it's going to be harder for you to get a position. In terms of adults, because we have so many master teachers and teacher assistants and the site directors, the summer program is really, quite well staffed. So what we need really, where others can be involved is sometimes in the afternoon session when it's the non-academic component, there are workshops or electives that volunteers could be involved with. Again, though, it's a commitment of 5 weeks or more, because you're going to have to really be there. Sometimes you can carve it out or work with the site director around a certain time period. We've had folks come in for 2 weeks and that kind of thing. But in terms of the organization, we look for very specific skill sets because we have needs as we go along, but it's not, well, we need you to tutor these kids, and that's a very, it's more that you're helping the organization. And, it could be that we're looking for someone who has, marketing experience, and we're kind of trying to understand how to become better marketers, or we need help designing newsletters, or accounting, or we need a legal voice. And I think that these are things that those are very specific ad hoc things that we could use, but it's not always what people want. They're like, well, you're an education-based thing, I just want to do with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't always have slots for that.
Well, thank you so much to our speakers.